So last week I started a debate in my comment section about who the most influential European country is. I said the Netherlands due to its technology advances and having technology that the entire world needs to advance into the future. There was a lively debate and I welcome that. I'm going to ask a similar question and hopefully we can have some more debate. From a strategic standpoint, who do you think is the most important ally to the United States? And when I talk about strategic, I mean geographic location, military capability, economy and trade, technology, as well as diplomatic effectiveness, diplomatic efforts, etc. So let's get a couple out of the way that you may already think. The first being obviously our closest partner and our neighbor, Canada. And while I love the Canadians and we would fight to the ends of hell together and we are very much integrated across the board, being right next door to the United States really serves no strategic purpose for us. So while you're in the top 10 at a solid number 2, you aren't number 1. Number 3, the United Kingdom. Dependable, capable military, decent trade, great diplomatic efforts. But in Europe, we have more capable partners that could serve the U.S.'s needs, especially in dealing with a Russian threat, specifically in countries like Germany, France, Netherlands. Going on, we have Asia. And actually, before I go into Asia, I'm going to let it out right now. There's no European countries in the top 10, or excuse me, not top 10, in the number 1 position. No European countries fill the number 1 position. So that kind of leaves Asia. We have South Korea and Taiwan, not number 1 in my opinion. You have limited capability in helping with Russia when it comes to those 2 countries, although they are great in trade partners, great militaries, etc. Mexico, similar to Canada, but with just larger issues and greater limitations when it comes to global stage type geopolitics and geostrategy. And then one honorable mention I want to have on here is Australia. Australia gets an honorable mention for being awesome at just about everything they do, but you are just too damn far away from everything and do too little trade with the United States. And I know that's improving, but that's not it. So there's really only one country that checks all the blocks, and most of you probably have guessed it already. It's an Asian nation, and it's Japan. And here comes the collective anger from Europe. And again, this isn't who we're best friends with. This isn't who our oldest ally is, or our top trading partner, or who we share culture with, or where we visit on vacation. This is purely a geostrategic play on the global stage. And I love all of your countries, but Japan fulfills a greater geostrategic goal, broad spectrum, than all of the other European countries. So why is that? Well, first and foremost is location. Japan sits at the intersection of China and Russia in the Pacific. We're looking at Russian naval bases right now. Now, obviously, you can see we have Japan here. I can zoom in. We have Japan here. Up here, these gray, and I'll show you here, these gray icons, that's the Russian Pacific Fleet bases. Majority of this fleet operates here, and it creates kind of a band where Russia operates between the Sea of Japan and the Bering Strait along kind of like this arc right here. Therefore, you can see already that Japan is strategically placed very well to handle any kind of issues when it comes to Russia. In addition, the largest port in the world, including, well, obviously if this is in the world, it's obviously the largest port in China, is Shanghai. You can see proximity here to Japan, to Shanghai, China. So this intersection here for handling China and handling the Russians by Japan is very strategically strong. Some might ask why not South Korea, mainly to do with their just overall strength in general, as well as other economic factors, but also a great partner. Moving on, how would they deal with Russia? Well, honestly, Japan has one of the strongest navies in the world. Now, it's a defense force according to official rules, but let's be honest, it's a navy. They have 2 light carriers with F-35s. They have 22 advanced submarines, 36 destroyers, including highly advanced Aegis-equipped destroyers, 4 multi-purpose frigates. The Japanese Navy could probably easily dismantle the Russian Pacific Fleet alone, but they would integrate with the United States. And those numbers are current. There are an additional 35 to 40 boats being built of different classes currently in Japan. Japan has 154 different combat ships, boats, including logistics, and Russia has about 140 in their Pacific Fleet. So you can see it's positioned very well there. Moving on, the Japanese also are working on a 6th-generation fighter with the United Kingdom and Italy. Its first flight will be in 2028. You can kind of see what it looks like here. Pretty badass, very much reminiscent of the F-22, kind of a F-22, F-35 mix. Now, this is a rendering, I believe, so it's not the actual aircraft, but it should be pretty neat. For the record, the U.S. is working on its 6th-generation fighter called the Next Generation Air Dominance platform, or Air Dominance Fighter. This is what it looks like. That's a pretty ballin' aircraft, too, so very advanced. I just wanted to show that because it's cool. Moving on to why Japan is a great strategic partner, the number one strategic partner. So from an economic standpoint, Japan is the 4th largest trading partner to the U.S. Now you have Canada, Mexico, China, and then you have the European Union as a collection of countries and Asian nation as a collection. Then you have Japan at number 4. So obviously that is a pretty huge asset for the United States with that economic integration. They're just ahead of Germany, but still ahead of them. Moving on, we have Japan is the 4th largest single country stock exchange in the world, behind number 1 and number 2, which is the U.S. with New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, and then you have China. The U.S. is the 2nd largest trading partner to Japan, and Japan has the 3rd largest GDP in the world. You can see number 1 U.S., number 2 China, number 3 Japan. The Japanese are the 2nd largest holder of dollars in reserve. Weirdly, China is number 1, despite the fact that everyone thinks that they're going to replace the dollar. They own the most by a huge margin. Actually, they're growing. This was actually the growth over last month. They've increased a significant amount. Russia still holds a good chunk as well, but has reduced their holdings. Going off track here. So moving on, you can see that economically, Japan is a highly diversified advanced market economy that encompasses technology, manufacturing, research, culture exports, tourism, and a little bit of agriculture. So all things that stabilize its economy. It does have demographic issues, but it deals with them with that technology. And that's where I move into technology. And when we talk about technology, I mean, it's Japan. What country for the last 30 years has been synonymous with technological advances? I know we've seen rises in the Netherlands, and Taiwan, South Korea, and China, but Japan is still a tip of the spear level country when it comes to robotics, AI, semiconductors, etc. I mean, tech is their number 2 export behind cars. So Japan is still very advanced, and I don't think anyone would argue about that. Now, finally, we have diplomatic reliability. After recent reconciliations with South Korea, where the 2 countries are now moving forward jointly along with the U.S., they are growing their diplomatic efforts in the region surrounding China. For the first time, the Japanese Ministry of Defense explicitly framed their stability around Taiwan being stable as well, which is important to Japan's own security, according to the Defense of Japan white paper that was released in July of 2021. So China's feeling a crunch in this region. Japan and Australia also signed defensive agreements in October of last year. Japan and the Philippines signed one at the same time, and then Japan and Vietnam signed a treaty to share military equipment and grow military cooperation, as well as Japan and Indonesia signing a similar agreement, and Japan and Brunei have signed agreements as well. Over the past 3 years, Japan has formed strong alliances that have created this barrier around China, and jointly with the U.S., Japan has effectively sealed China's capability to within the First Island chain here. So what that means is the First Island chain tends to run this line right here, right through the South China Sea. So right here is the Parcel Islands through Taiwan up to Japan. That's basically where China has uninhibited freedom of maneuver, is in this line right here, because Japan has allied with South Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, Brunei, which is right in this region here, Vietnam, and then down in the south you have Australia, obviously. So very strong, very powerful ally when it comes to diplomacy and alliances within the region. Many of those mirror the U.S.'s alliances. So yeah, Japan is my pick for the most important global partner. Interestingly, this hasn't largely changed over the years since the Cold War, when the Reagan administration recognized the very same that Japan was, and that's why Reagan placed a huge emphasis on working with Japan going forward. So let me know your thoughts.